Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Ozcast. The Mental Health Show with Mark Haston.
Deb Gleeson works for the Mental Health Partners, and my understanding is that Deb's been doing this for a long, long time. She certainly knows her stuff, and she joins us on the program. Deb, welcome along. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks, Mark.
That's my pleasure, Deb. Yes, my pleasure. Did you work today? Did you do any work at all today over the phone or over Skype or over Zoom, whatever?
A lot of training is closed down now. There are some companies and organisations that are still wanting their staff trained, especially in these times.
Yeah.
And we're able to do that over the internet.
Oh, that's good. It's wonderful. You wouldn't have been able to, you couldn't have done that 40 years ago.
No, we couldn't.
No, technology is wonderful. Deb, in a general sense, what sorts of things and tools and programs are people asking you for?
It's really interesting. The main thing that people are asking for is how to have conversations with people about mental health. You know, how to start those conversations, how to approach someone you're worried about, you know, and how to then continue the conversation in a way that's helpful, and what to say, what not to say, and what are the best things to help, the suggestions you can give people.
Yeah, and I guess when you do spot, and it's happened to me, it happened to me a number of times when I was at Channel 10 and also 5AA and other organisations I've worked with, you do notice that people change, and sometimes it may be circumstantial. That's not probably the right word, but you know, it may be just as a result of something that's going on around the office, or a bit of pressure as a result of their job, and I understand that that's important too. But other times, I feel as though you can sort of tell, Deb, when it's a little more serious than that. So, in a general sense, what would you suggest that someone does if they are contemplating approaching someone who may be feeling unwell?
Okay, so the first thing I'd say is plan. So don't just sort of rush into it. Give yourself some time to think about place. Where are you going to do that? Somewhere that's confidential. You know, maybe go for a walk, as long as only the two of you.
Yeah.
And time, you know, these days, with the anxiety people are feeling, people are very tired in the afternoons. They're getting grumpy and, you know, just needing to be by themselves in the afternoons. So try and do those conversations in the mornings. And the last thing is just that first approach. How do you start talking to someone about their mental health? And my tip for that is talk about yourself and your own feelings. So start with, I'm feeling worried. Tell them something about yourself, and then tell them why. Something like, I've noticed changes. I've noticed a difference. Those sort of things.
That's very good.
And then the last bit.
Yeah.
And I would like. And then to understand, to help, to support, to listen, any of those things.
That's wonderful advice, Deb. And I don't, even right at the start when you said, choose a location, that's so important, isn't it? Because if you're in a room,
it is incredibly important.
If you're in a room full of people, or even if there's just half a dozen, and you walk over quietly as they're at their desk and say something, if they're anxious and paranoid, they may feel as though other people are listening. So that's just not the right thing to do, is it? Yeah.
Yeah. So actually taking your time to plan so that you're going to have the best circumstances for you and the other person.
And everyone's different too, aren't they? And what
Everybody is.
Yeah, and what I mean by that is we're both different. In other words, the person who is unwell and the person who is perhaps contemplating talking to them, they're both different people as well. So I understand what you're saying. In a general sense, you're saying do it that way, but not all of us think that way, do we?
No. And that's why I say to people, stop, think about it, plan that first sentence. Tell them something about yourself, give them something. So I feel. Then why, and then what do you want? And that's a good way to start a mental health conversation.
How long do you fear, perhaps a difficult question for you to answer, but how have you done any research on how long it takes the person that is unwell to trust that person? Is that too broad a question?
I think it's an incredibly broad question. The only thing we can do is be genuinely yourself, and if you're approaching someone, obviously you're concerned. So it's great to say that to them. It's fine. And the more you give of yourself in the beginning, it's sort of like a reciprocity. They then feel more comfortable giving you something of themselves.
And that makes absolute complete sense. What about a scenario here, Deb? What about if I'm the person that's unwell and someone approaches me and I simply say, no, I'm okay? What do you do there?
The first thing, it's so important to hear the person's no. And to go, I hear your no and I respect it. Okay? Would you be able to tell me, is there a specific reason for the no? But don't disregard someone's no.
Yeah.
If someone says no, and then you approach them again in another couple of days, they'll feel more comfortable because they'll know this is a person who respects me. So listen to the no.
What about for those who might not have the confidence themselves to approach someone? Would you advise that they speak to their next in charge or their boss about it?
Absolutely. So we're all in this together, and noticing something about someone is as important as doing something. It's the first step. So if you notice something and you don't feel comfortable, tell somebody else. Lots of businesses these days have mental health first aiders.
Yes.
You know how we all have physical first aiders?
Yes, I do, yep.
Yep. Well, lots of business have mental health first aid. So that would be your first port of call. Yeah.
If you didn't have the confidence yourself. Is
Yeah.
what we're talking about, Deb, is this the sort of thing that mental health partners teach organisations?
Yes. We teach mental health first aid.
Yeah.
So a 12-hour course, which then allows the person to become a workplace mental health first aider.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So if you went into a business, for example, I don't know. I mean, let's just simply say Channel 10, where I used to work, and I think there was,
Yes.
I think at one stage there was 130 people working there. Is it the people who want to be the mental health first aiders that do the course, or is the course open to everyone?
That would depend on the organisation. We would always suggest that the people that want to do it are the best candidates.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But, for some businesses that doesn't work well, so, they'll choose some people. We've trained people at the Submarine Corp, and they chose people that wanted to be mental health first aid.
And to be a mental health first aid worker is it's a very responsible role. I mean, these days,
Incredibly.
I would predict, unfortunately, you'd be quite busy.
Yes, it's an interesting thing. Our first aiders are often the physical first aider as well in their workplace.
Yeah,
and they say to us, I use mental health first aid 5 to 10 times more often than I use physical first aid.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me at all. Give me an example of. Do you have sort of like micro courses where they're a breakaway from the main course?
Yes, we do. So we do specific courses to talk to people who may be having suicidal thoughts. We do small courses for people who are using non-suicidal self-injury, which other people might call self-harm.
Self-harm, yeah.
To manage their mental health symptoms.
Wow, that in itself is hard for me to fathom. I mean, I've had mental health issues all of my life. I'm a lot better now,
Me too.
Yeah, and so I sort of feel as though I've got a bit of a grasp on it all, but I've never really been able to understand self-harm. Is that quite prevalent, Deb?
It's something that is still out there in our community, that some people who are in exquisite psychological pain find that self-injuring themselves helps.
Is that right? Can you explain that? Are you able to just expand on that a little?
Well, let's take one of the reasons that people self-injure, and that is a thing we call disassociation. So people who have been abused as children, their being to protect them uses a thing called disassociation. So here is my physical body, which is being abused.
Yeah.
But our being takes our psychological self away from that physical self, disassociates it. So you psychologically feel a very, very long way away from your physical body.
Wow.
And that helps children who are being abused. However, as those people grow up, whenever they are stressed, their being goes, I'll help you.
Yeah.
I'll disassociate you. And they find themselves a long way away from themselves.
Wow.
And self-harm, hurting themselves, can bring them, straight them back into their body.
Isn't that extraordinary? And Deb, without, I'm reluctant to ask this question, but it strikes me as being perhaps an obvious one.
Yep.
When they're doing their self-harm, and I hope this doesn't offend anyone or upset anyone, but I think it's an important question. Are they intending to? They're not intending to kill themselves, are they?
No, that's why the new name for it isn't self-harm. It's non-suicidal self-injury.
Yeah. That's extraordinary. Just extraordinary.
Yes.
With
the majority of people, Mark, at the moment would be feeling anxious.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
And you know what? That's perfectly reasonable. We shouldn't pathologise the fact that a lot of people are feeling anxious.
Yeah.
If your listeners are feeling anxious, I would say to them, that is your normal reaction to an abnormal event.
Yeah.
And you are not mentally unwell. It's very reasonable.
That's a very, very important distinction, actually, because, and I'm very pleased that you brought that up. I hadn't even thought of asking you that. That's so important. People who are feeling unwell at the moment, or well, let me rephrase that, people who are feeling anxious at the moment are not necessarily people who I guess, suffer depression all their lives, for example.
No. And yes, some people who are feeling anxious now may go on to develop an anxiety disorder. But not everyone.
Yeah.
In fact, not even most of us. Just some.
And in other words, what you're saying here, you're alluding to the fact that once this is over, this issue that we're all going through, not necessarily straight away, but over time, people will get back to hopefully their normal lives and the way they feel normally. Yeah. The people that went through the bushfires, many of them were feeling extremely anxious, but that was a normal reaction to an abnormal event. So That's interesting. Deb, if you don't mind me asking, what sort of things, if you don't mind me asking, this is quite personal, but what sort of things are you doing just to keep yourself as calm as you can?
Okay. So I'm a woman who's lived with depression all my life. So I know some things that help me. The first one is gratitude.
Yeah, I understand that.
When I'm in a stressful situation, my depressed mind concentrates on the negative. So I need to consciously help myself see the positive.
Yeah.
So I keep a gratitude journal every single night, and I read it during the day if I forget, so that I'm
I love it.
consciously reminding myself that not everything is bad.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because when I was in the Hayter Clinic, that's what we started doing, and I've been doing that ever since, basically. And there are certain things that I'm grateful for that I never ever would have even thought that I should be grateful for, like just putting my head down on a pillow that's clean.
Yes.
Having Jack up on my bed, having a roof over my head, whereas, when you get involved in life and you're running around and you've got a massively, important job and you're earning a lot of money, the things you're grateful for are false. I've got a beautiful BMW, or I've got a, beautiful house in the eastern suburbs, or, really, you can get right down to the minutiae, can't you? Hey, Deb, thank you.
Yeah.
This has been really enlightening and very helpful. So, for those who are interested, who might be listening, who have a business, and would like to get in contact with you, they can do that through the website, I take it?
Yes, Mental Health Partners.
Mental Health Partners, and any other detail, or is it simply that, Mental Health Partners, and just go to the contact page?
Yeah, www.mentalhealthpartners.com.
Deb, thank you. That was so enlightening, and I really appreciate it. And thanks for being at the top of the program.
No problem. I really appreciate your commitment to having these discussions.
Thanks, Deb. Have a lovely day and be safe.
Okay, you too.
See and listen to more now at thementalhealthshow.com. This podcast is part of the Ozcast Network. Ozcast.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.